Oh, crikey, that's blown it.
I'm aware football match has been a moment when a lot of young boys and young men get together, possibly uniquely, and it can, for no good reason, become very emotional, and you find yourself doing things together as boys and as males that you don't really often do. So there's definitely that aspect. You know, you'll end up singing songs, you'll end up kind of representing your emotion in peculiarly eccentric ways that you know, probably transcends analysis, really.
I mean, the difference between the experience of a piece of music and a football match is that any piece of music, any work of art is innately inferior because you know the result. I mean, the wonderful thing about watching football and why, you know, I think 90 minutes is far too short and it should go on forever even if your team is playing badly, is that you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen.
First time I come here, I was brought by a friend of my dad's, and I was well into it, you know, and I just thought, well, this is it. Can't go and watch crap teams anymore, got to go and watch good ones. And Villa was the only good one in the Midlands, and I think it still has a kind of superior atmosphere to most of the clubs around here. It's got a fantastic tradition here, and there's good-sized crowds. Should be bigger, you know, should have bigger crowds at the moment because the team's turning out great performances. But on that first day, I was just totally struck by the atmosphere created by 34,000 people. I think what really makes the atmosphere is that it's like 34,000 people all wanting the same thing to happen, basically to see a team in claret and blue score a goal. And so it's one of those games which puts everybody in the same situation, and you know, it takes you away from your real life and you forget about the worries of real life and you come here and get totally carried away in the game. The visual aspects of the club denote what history it has. Most, like, you know, the architecture of the facade of the club is something which not many clubs have. And I think that is something worth hanging on to, is the sense that the club is coming from somewhere and is going somewhere, and like if you're always just building new stuff, that doesn't help that feel of continuity and like of the game being part of the community. You have to keep some of the good traditions and add to those, not just destroy everything in order to start again. I mean, look what happened after you know, after the war here, when everyone had this new idea about to make a great new Britain, and we're having to put up with looking at all these really ugly buildings now because of that. You know, there's always a chance for old and new to live next to each other, and football could be a great example of that.
In the summer of 1985, I was writing a piece commissioned by a festival in Rouen to be performed in the most bizarre setting imaginable, which was a disused, deconsecrated electricity generating station, vast factory-like building with a huge window at the end. And I was working on this piece and had to have a certain character because the reverberation time in the space was very long, so the piece was very slow and processional and ceremonial. While I was working on this piece, I sat down in front of the television to watch the European Cup final between Juventus and Liverpool in Hazel Stadium in Brussels. And instead of seeing a football match, saw a war, saw a disaster, saw a tragedy, followed by a football match, which was, you know, a ghost match. And in the subsequent, you know, I was very deeply affected by this tragedy. And in the days after this event, when I carried on writing the piece, the impact of what had happened in the stadium and the impact of what was happening to the families of those 39 or 41 Italian fans gradually seeped into me to such an extent that the whole focus and purpose of the piece changed, and what I'd been writing as an abstract piece imperceptibly and irrevocably became a memorial, actually a court memorial for the Hazel Stadium death. Became the most moving performance that I've ever been part of, and the most moving performance that I've ever witnessed. I was, you know, simultaneously a witness to this performance and also a performer in the performance. And it was only ever performed once in that form, and it's a totally unforgettable experience, both for me and for all the people who were involved in it. In 1970, when I was living on Ladbroke Grove, my nearest neighbour was Gavin Bryars, another composer, and we were very close friends with John Tilbury, the pianist. And John had been a QPR fan since, I don't know, about 1949. And Gavin had been going for a few years, and he said to me, you know, what are you doing this afternoon, Saturday afternoon? I said, nothing much. So come along to QPR, and I think I went along. Reluctantly, I didn't even know that, you know, QPR ground was sort of 10 to 15-minute walk away. And after one afternoon, I was totally hooked. I mean, hooked with an obsession and a passion and you know, to outsiders, a kind of stupidity, which is not related to any other obsession, passion, or stupidity. You know, whether it's you know, one's work, whether it's music or whether it's women or whatever. But I remember certain events and where I was because they were connected with football matches. And I specifically remember talking about recent history, where I was when QPR beat Manchester United 4-1 at Old Trafford. I was in bed in a house in France with a migraine. Central heating had gone off, trying to keep warm, trying to get rid of my headache. And there was a sports report at 5 o'clock English time. The match had kicked off at 5 o'clock, and there was kind of a 2-minute preamble when they were discussing the other results. And then 2 minutes later, they switched to Old Trafford and said, QPR 2 goals up. And, I don't know what it did to my migraine. I think it made it far worse. So I thought I was dreaming, because the whole thing about having your team and the passion is that there is a hell of a lot of pain. And I've been to away matches, and there's nothing more dismal than either seeing a bad performance in the away match or losing, and then having to come back on some miserable train at midnight, sort of shunted into some siding at Wilston Junction, full of, and it's cold, no heating and all that. But you do that, and it's very, very important.
I remember why I went to see Manchester City, because I used to go to a school in Stockport called North Redditch Primary School, and everyone in the playground supported Manchester United. And imprinted on me, even then, was some weird need to be identified with the underdog. So at that time, United were possibly, the most famous team in the world, Busby Babes, Georgie Best, Dennis Law, Bobby Charlton. And I decided to support Manchester City, who were near the bottom of the 2nd division. And I remember, telling my dad, who hadn't been to a football match since he moved up from London, and was obviously incredibly disappointed that I'd chosen Manchester City. He was obviously waiting for the moment I said I want to go to football. And I came home one day and I said, I want to go and see Manchester City play. And he was desperately disappointed as we took our place amongst 7,000 sparsely attended crowd to see a bottom of the 2nd division game, where United probably down the road playing Leeds in front of 55, But it was a wonderful moment, how he Dowd in goals. And the fact that City won 3-1, I think that was it. I was stuck. And I've been stuck ever since, and I'll always be stuck. Even if I lived in South Africa or New Zealand, I'll always be a Manchester City fan.
They're the only team I can think of in the world who can make you feel like they're going to lose a 2-0 lead in the last 2 minutes of a game, that they're actually going to lose 3-2 to the most bizarre and ridiculous goals. But they're also the team, I think one of the teams, that has a kind of frantic attacking mentality, and they can produce great flowing moves, beautiful passes and so on. And I think it's the combination of those two things. It's a weird kind of combination. Whoever plays for them, it's something in the club, it's something in the turf at Main Road.
What type of bananas have you got?
Oh, we've got small ones and the large ones, and we've even got the shirts.
Is that to keep them warm?
That's to keep them warm, and the hats also to keep them warm.
And they go on the bananas?
On the bananas, yes.
How many have you sold of these?
Oh, hundreds and hundreds.
And where's it all going to end?
When we get to the cup final.
The inflatables in the late 80s definitely started at Manchester City. Now, my reading of this, there's been many readings. I mean, our magazine, The New Statesman, once commissioned me to write an article about inflatables in football, why people held bananas. And I delivered an article, and they were very disappointed with it, because they wanted me to read into this banana situation some kind of racist connotation, that people were holding up the bananas as some kind of declaration on the nature of Johnny Barnes. But my reading of the situation was that a very smashed supporter one day, mid-80s, wandered along, probably won a 5 inflatable banana in a competition or something, and for a long time he was on his own, standing on the terraces with this inflatable banana. Very, very slowly, a few other smashed Manchester City supporters sort of joined in, and so a few bananas happened, and there was no good reason for it, and I couldn't explain to the New Statesman that it was a representation of the eccentricity of supporting Manchester City. It was nothing more, nothing deeper than that. I remember the first time I ever heard City fans sing Blue Moon. It was a wonderful moment, a very moving moment. Because again, Manchester City fans are comedians, and they like nothing better when they're 4-1 down to sing, we only sing when we're losing. So, there's never much there except the fact that it just happens, And maybe you're looking for the sociological investigation, They're not often there.
I think the connection between the the rave culture and football in Manchester anyway was the fact that it was a lot of the football fans, especially at City, are from that kind of part of the youth, the sharp end of the youth culture, and it was a lot of the working class lads who went to the football who were in at the beginning of the rave culture in 1988 with the acid house explosion, and it had a massive difference, to be honest, because the same guys who were probably in a club looking to cause trouble a year or two years before that, prior to that, were in there on ecstasy, and they wanted to hug you rather than punch you, you know. So obviously that has spilled to the terraces.
If you can picture this, at a football match, somebody scores, you're firm in your corner or on your side. As soon as a goal scores, it's hands in the air and everyone's screaming and shouting, just for that 1 second. And in a rave, what happens if a DJ plays a certain record where there's just singing or there's just piano drops, it's automatically the same sort of vibe. The hands go in the air and everyone around you is doing exactly the same thing. He's feeling the same thing, whether it's a goal or whether it's, you know, a rush from a certain tune that somebody's played.
One of the reasons that football culture became more mellow, less violent at domestic club level anyway in this country, was because of the contemporary dance culture scene, which crossed over. It really crossed over probably after the Heysel disaster. The Heysel disaster was probably the nadir of English football violence. Football culture didn't die, it just gained a new boost from dance culture. And I think what happened in particular over this period was not just an increase in drug taking, ecstasy taking, for example, which I think the media in general tends to focus on. It isn't just that it was pharmacologically driven, although a lot of ecstasy was consumed. It was just that the culture had changed. It was more receptive to different influences. Contemporary dance culture is a particularly good example of that, where you get males dancing on their own. It's no longer the cattle market that it once was.
Just talking from a male point of view, in the early 80s, when you went out to a club, it was either you was either too drunk, or if you was dancing on your own, you was either too drunk, or you couldn't care. And that, you know, that was far and few between. You should only dance, was the quote, if you was dancing with a girl at a disco. Whereas raves have broke these barriers down now. You can go and dance and express yourself wherever you want in a club.
If anybody asked me the question, you know, about the way that pop music and football kind of connected in the late 80s, early 90s, my favourite answer would be that I really enjoyed the way that 808 State seemed to make their pop dance music connect to the way that you feel on the terraces and watching a match. The mood and the rhythm and the motion and the excitement and the boredom and the intermission and the before the match and the after the match. The 808 State's music definitely came out of the fact that they were making a music very directly connected to nightlife. They were in nightlife, watching nightlife, part of nightlife, and they made their music correspondingly. And that nightlife, a lot of people coming together in union to share their emotions and share their lives, it can be obviously very connected to the way a football match is, the way that, you know, the highs and the lows and the disappointments and the triumphs, and the way that you all come together to share something. When you go to a club, you're basically in amongst a lot of strangers, and at its peak you can have such an amazing time for no good reason, which is the same as at a football match.
I seen a programme about a thing in America where, you know, grown men who'd not really been shown love from their fathers had run into fields screaming and shouting, you know, amongst other people who'd had the same experience. You know, it's similar to that. It's like, it's hard to show yourself for what you really are. Some people can do it at raves, some people can do it at football matches, you can do it with a few beers or whatever, you know. It's getting harder and harder to show your emotions because you have to be a man, you have to be this stature, you know. Whereas on the football field, when somebody scores, they go hugging and, you know, screaming, you know.
Trevor Morley, a fantastic goal right at the end. Yeah, well, I mean, I've been about 3 or 4 before. Yes! Bit of hard luck, and my finishing was spot on, so it's good time to come, but I was due a goal really in the game. I had a few chances.
You had chances, you could have a few chances. Did you think it was never coming?
No, I always felt we'd score. I thought we dominated it second half.
Here we come, United!
And I think really we deserved to win.
What we can see now in the 1990s is that the TV values certainly do drive the game. You've got a Premier League mainly driven by TV money. I think that's likely to happen right across Europe. You've already got it in Italy. It's probable that by the late 1990s you'll have a European Super League, which will be TV driven. There will be a kind of resistance movement, a defence movement of the fans who particularly want to stand, who still want to stand. That's slightly been successful over the last few months. It may be that all-seater stadia won't be completely introduced. You will still get terrace culture to some extent. But I think this is something that by the end of the century we will see change completely. You will be talking now about a modernised, rationalised football industry.
Now I see, you know, for better or for worse, that you know, television is dictating not only what time of day a match kicks off, what day of the week it kicks off, you know, what conditions, etc., etc. And I find all that. I find it makes football into something that is not real. It becomes very fake, and what is even more fake and phony and money-oriented is the idea of the World Cup taking place in America. I just find that absolutely horrendous. And you know, if FIFA are going to change certain rules to make football more accessible to and acceptable by a public who has no interest in the game, who have singularly failed to get the professional game going in America, I think it would really kind of turn my stomach.
Essentially, it's a simple game that has miraculous moments, that's watched in a really beautiful state by a lot of strangers. That's it. Once you start trying to read things into it and change its kind of fabric, it would fall apart. You know, it can't hold it. I mean, you'd end up, in a way, I mean, what people would like it to end up is a kind of American football situation, which is a kind of incredibly implosive, false emotion that is created and styled, and football isn't like that. You know, it is just people hoofing, and you look for the magical moments that come unexpectedly, that take your breath away. You know, to try and make those magic moments happen 100% of the time, it would cease to exist. There's nothing better than 66 0-0 draws for that 67th 4-1 classic, you know, played on an icy pitch in December when the temperature's below freezing and you can barely move. You know, that's the moment.
A wet Saturday afternoon in the pouring rain with the pitch cutting up and players falling all over the place and mistakes being made, and wonderful. Nothing better. Standing uncovered. Wonderful.
My favourite.
You can join in a discussion about music and football at a special event chaired by Steve